So it turns out a $27 haircut from Great Clips showed me a lot more about my own life and teaching than I ever expected it to. Normally, I don't love haircuts. It just really feels like a chore. It's not that hard, but just the weeks of telling myself I need to get it done, then driving 10 minutes, sitting awkwardly in a lobby, waiting for a stylist to ask you questions. It just is a lot of friction, and combined with a lack of urgency, they're never something I look forward to. But this week I walked out of Great Clips feeling not just lighter, but inspired for this week's essay and video. It's fitting I was teaching my sophomores about similes and metaphors because those were kind of just whirring around the whole time I was in the barber seat. So here are 4 lessons I learned from getting my haircut this week, and hopefully you can relate to them too. Lesson number 1 is you're always growing. This metaphor is a bit trite, but it really is a practice I've been leaning into for the last year. This idea that everything that is going on, whether or not it feels like I'm growing or moving in the right direction, is a part of the process, is a part of my evolution and growth. That's something I've really leaned into for the last year. And even when I was driving over for a haircut, that was kind of spinning in my head. Even though I'd spent weeks and weeks looking in the mirror, reminding myself like, man, I really got to go get this finished. And the nice thing is, as I've been thinking about how I talk to myself and what sorts of mindsets I carry around productivity, I realized this time I was a whole lot more relaxed. There was less of this like, oh, I really got to get this done, and a lot more like, oh, guess I'm going to get a haircut soon. This trust and acceptance that even though it wasn't happening now, it was gonna get done. And the few weeks of resistance was part of that process. And frankly, for these videos and these essays too, that's been a huge component of being able to produce them. This is the first time I think I have written or worked on something where I'm leaning into feeling stuck or periods of procrastination or not just grinding stuff out. And ironically, I have been doom scrolling less, I've avoided the task less, and certainly have beaten myself up way less. And the more times that I go through that cycle and recognize it, the easier it's gotten. And driving to Great Clips for that 10 minutes, as soon as I got in the car, I recognized that pattern again. And it was pretty relieving and a bit amusing to see that I was just 15 minutes away from going and getting this thing done that I knew was gonna happen. It wasn't really that big of a deal. And any amount of stress or pressure beforehand wasn't really necessary to getting the task done. So that was my first lesson. Lesson number 2 is that no one's really watching. This is something I've talked about in some ways before, but at least when I was younger, haircuts were not just inconvenient, they were terrifying. They were super embarrassing. I thought that the next day at school, everyone would think my hair looked goofy. I could never figure out how to make it look cool. I just assumed everyone was judging not just my haircut, but my every move, how I participated in class, on sports teams, what socks I was wearing, just really paranoid all the time. And I think that's pretty normal, but the older I've gotten, and certainly in the last year or two, just noticing how hyper aware I am of everyone's opinion all the time has been a huge game changer. And just like leaning into that feeling of being stuck, leaning into that hyper awareness has helped not only calm it down, but also to see where it can be very helpful, especially as a teacher. I find that it's not always a horrible thing to be hyper aware of what other people are thinking of me and the people around them. But at least when it comes to haircut, I walked out knowing, yeah, this is not a problem for me anymore. I don't care what other people think tomorrow, and frankly, I don't think anyone was thinking too much about it anyway. Okay, so lesson number 3, small talk matters. I'm from the Midwest, I am an extrovert, I am a recovering people pleaser, so I'm sure that I'm biased here, but especially as a teacher, I think small talk is an essential piece of connection for me in the classroom. I know a lot of people hate it, just talking about weather or an outfit or last night's game, drive some people crazy. But I really think that those quick exchanges are an excellent opportunity to build rapport, to signal like I see you without overstepping any boundaries, to invite opportunities for deeper connection, and especially getting a haircut. It softens the awkwardness between two strangers. And when I got to the stylist chair, the first minute or so was pretty awkward. It felt hurried, it felt uneasy. There was no need for either of us to really speak to each other, but as soon as she started asking just how work was for the day, we talked a little bit about that and the weather and argued about tacos, and very quickly I felt this level of ease and calm and connection that churned that moment from this kind of hurried transaction into a real human interaction. It didn't need to be deep, there just needed to be a quick conversation to signal that to each other, and then it could be quiet for the rest of the haircut. Lastly, lesson 4, I spoke to this earlier, that having a project you're working on, I think it just makes everything that you do a lot more meaningful and a lot more fun. When you've set some targets and you're working on something, Whether you're trying to or not, everything you're doing is kind of filtered through those goals and a sort of creative colander that just lets in a whole new array of things that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise. And for me this week, that looked like showing up to Great Clips and getting an essay and a video out of it. But it's also been a way to meet wonderful people and to come up with new ideas I didn't know existed as well. And it's really cool to see those same philosophies I'm practicing in the classroom to create more meaning and excitement around our projects there. They work the same in my own life too. I hear influencers and gurus all the time talk about trusting the process and praising the process as this key part of the human experience. And this week, I'm just grateful that the process led me through a fun meditation at Great Clips, regardless of the outcome. So thank you for watching. There'll be a new video next week.